Hey, Kratom Quitters. This is the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. My name is Libby. Today is episode 143. That is with Doug, and he was a really nice guy. I really enjoyed talking to him, and he had an interesting perspective. So I'm sure everyone will enjoy that and get a lot out of it. Today, I am here with Jacob. How are you doing, Jacob?
I'm doing okay. Just recovering from some injuries, but otherwise, all good. How about you?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for asking.
Cool. Well, I had a topic I wanted to chat about. So as I just mentioned, I've been recovering from an injury, and I was thinking about this as I was walking down the street in my neighborhood that has all these smoke shops and kratom shops that seem to have popped up over the last year. I would be lying to you all if I wouldn't say that the thought of relapsing or trying 7-OH particularly, for some reason, like I've gotten these weird intrusive thoughts like, okay, I'm injured, so maybe that would help with pain, or that would be a good idea, or I've never tried it. So I was just thinking about all of that and, everything I went through to get off kratom and going to treatment and all the different things. And I got myself into a place where I was like, you know what? There's no good reason to relapse. Every time I've done it, it's never ended well. I can almost guarantee that even if it would help with whatever pain I'm in, I would probably feel worse very quickly after taking it. And I know there's no way that I would just try it and that would be it. It would be hey, let's jump right back on this train and let's see where it takes me now. And it would lead to a very dark and bad place. So it just got me thinking, like, I don't think there is ever a good reason to relapse. And, thinking through all those thoughts, while they can be challenging, I think it's important, regardless of how much time you have off kratom. I've got more than 2 years now, and it's still something that I have to think about and deal with, even though, on medicated assisted treatment and have other things going on. So it's really just, it shows you what you're dealing with addiction and how it's something you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting topic because with the way the industry is evolving and these ever evolving new products that we, are bombarded with, and it's like really easy to be like, oh, well, I never got to try that. So maybe just this once. And really playing the tape through for me has been like, okay, absolute best case scenario. What would happen? What would happen was I had a great time. I feel really, really good. And I'm right back where I started yesterday, where I want to do it again.
Yep.
And then you're stuck in a loop. So that would be the best case scenario. And very more likely it feels okay for 5 minutes. And then you're like, damn, I just screwed everything up. I lost all my time. Like I have to come clean. Like the guilt just like quickly spirals. Often that's enough just to make me be like, all right, that's not an option today, but I totally get the desire to try these new things that are coming out, and the fallacy in your head. It's probably different. I should give it a shot. I should try it. I should get to, like, it's so crazy what your mind will do. If you can kind of take a step back and actually look at what it's doing, you're like, I'm crazy.
Yeah, I think that you're hitting on something, the I'm crazy thing. I just was thinking about, for most of my life, it was some sort of substance to rely on, dealing with trauma or dealing with mental, physical pain. My only coping mechanism for decades was drugs and alcohol, and then ultimately kratom. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, you've got 2 years now, all that behavior and all those coping mechanisms that you used to rely on are all gone. Yes, I've learned new ones. Yes, I'm going to meetings. Yes, I'm still, working a program. I'm doing all those things, but it's still, in the back of my mind that, like, that's where my brain wants to go. That default strategy of well, use some sort of substance, and in this case, kratom, or try 7-OH, because that's the solution. And like you said, playing the tape forward and using all those tools to unlearn that. Probably going to be doing that for the rest of my life. And I think we all are. It gets easier and it gets better the more time you have, but it's never going to be your brain's going to lose that, I don't think.
I'm so glad that you shared this, because I feel like sometimes people can look up to us and think that we've got it all figured out, because we've been off of it for so long. But, these things still creep up on us. And I'm curious, just because you're being honest, in the most recent events when this has been coming up for you, like what has been your go-to strategy or tool that you've been using?
Yeah, meetings. I've gone to a lot of online smart recovery meetings just because that's what I gravitate towards. Unfortunately, the in-person ones, there's not as many of those. I wish there were. I get to go to one a week. I have a really good friend who's like a mentor. He's a few years older than me. This dude, he had almost 15 years, and then 3 or 4 years ago, he relapsed on alcohol like really hard for a couple months, and he had to pick all those pieces up. And I called him and we chatted, and he was like, I totally get it. I did those things, and I can tell you where it's going to lead you. But it just goes to show you, like you said, like that's someone that I look up to. But that's what I did. I really, just leaned into the tools, played the tape forward, and relied heavy on my smart recovery community to kind of talk through and use that cognitive behavioral training to reinforce the fact that this is a bad decision.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Like, I still struggle with picking up the phone, even though I know that that's a ticket out of it, because like the admitting that that's happening is so hard for me. So
It was really hard.
it's a good reminder. Thank you for modeling that, is what I'm saying.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and I totally relate to. Those are like the phone calls. It's going to be helpful, but you like dread doing it. I forget what guest I was talking to, but they were talking about how when they came clean to a family member, like how good it felt, but like how much shame they had. And that's kind of how I even feel in those situations. Well, I think with that, we can get on to the interview, and I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, have a good night. Thank you, Jacob.
You too.
Hi, Kratom Quitters. Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. My name is Libby, and today I'm here with Doug. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
I am in recovery, and I like to introduce myself as Doug, addict alcoholic.
Amazing.
Yeah, I live in California. We moved here 6 months ago from Idaho to finish out our working careers.
And who is we?
Oh, me and my wife and our 2 dogs.
Yeah, you have a beautiful family. You showed me some pictures earlier today.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought I would share some photos just because I was recently listening to the 3 latest, and they were like talking about sharing dogs and what kind of a dog and dog therapy and all that stuff.
Yeah, Kratom can be a heavy topic, so we like to keep it light where we can.
Right on.
Yeah.
I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah. Any other ways that you like to keep your life light? Like any other ways you experience joy or hobbies or anything like that?
Yeah, I really enjoy doing Bikram hot yoga. And that's like my favorite thing to do besides climbing and surfing. I don't do much of those these days just because we don't live so close to the coast. And then hiking and just going, being outdoors mostly.
I'm a big outdoor person myself, so I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to tell me a little bit about how you first got introduced to Kratom, how that became part of your life?
Yeah. It's crazy how innocent everybody's story seems to be. This herbal tonic being sold over the counter. Yeah, my brother mentioned it, and I think his friend had turned him onto it, and I thought, I'm gonna try it. And I did. It had a subtle effect on me, and I describe it, early on as like, a real good cup of coffee, but maybe without the jitters. As long as I didn't take too much, it seemed to hold my focus and my intention, and it worked well early on for me. And it started with the powder, but I couldn't stand the taste, which it cracks me up kind of listening to some of the recordings on this podcast of like people just putting it in bottles and like just drinking it. Like I could never figure that out. Like, so luckily I found the tabs. Yeah, I think I started with 6. I think over time it was like, when we moved from Idaho to California, I was up to 16 tabs. And I forget, like, I don't know how many grams that equals up to. I just know 16 was like my sweet spot for the day.
Was that all day long?
No. For me, like if I took them too late into the day, like I would have awful sleep. I would take them pretty much first thing in the morning, and that would kind of get me into the evening. But I found the Kratom first, and then I listened to a podcast, and this guy introduced me to the kava Kratom tincture. And so when I was in Idaho, I thought, oh, I'm going to try this, because this guy was an alcoholic, and he's like, yeah, I created this herbal supplement for like an alcohol replacement. And I was like, I got to try this because I'm totally an alcoholic. And I did. And so I just did the auto ship. It started with the auto ship, and it was probably about a year ago. And so when I got the auto ship, I would take a bottle. I would basically drink a bottle a day until the case ran out. So 12 days. And it was like really great. Like I would take it in the late afternoon because I worked in the evening, and it would just kind of carry me through the evening because I was like the custodian of the school, and I would clean from 4 o'clock until 8 or 9. And it didn't seem to be a problem. It seemed to be like this kind of cool little pick me up, And then what happened for me was, for whatever reason, I somehow got them to ship like another case like 2 weeks later. And so now it's getting 2 cases a month. And this was like, I don't know, maybe 90 days later, it started happening. I was, oh, well, 2 cases a month. This is great, And so I would essentially just take one a day. And I didn't find that product anywhere. And so it was just an auto ship that came. But then what happened for me was we moved to California in July of last year. And, I definitely had more access to it, like the vape shops. And I was doing like the tabs in the morning, and then I would do like, maybe a bottle or two. And I forget when it happened, but eventually like I felt like the tabs weren't working anymore. And, that tincture bottle was like my go-to for me. And towards the end of my using, like before I quit, I thought I was going crazy because I couldn't quit this stuff. And I found this place in Auburn because it was like $10 a bottle. I found this little smoke shop. I just happened to walk in there, and it was like $7.88 for a bottle. And I was like, I'll take a case of those, please. And so that was my go-to. I would buy 2 cases at a time. And towards the end, I was doing about 4 bottles a day, sometimes 5, but that seemed to be too much for my body to handle, as opposed to like, dude, I've heard some crazy stories on this podcast and other stories where people were taking 10 and 12 bottles, which I can't even imagine, just because I would get pretty nauseous towards the end. So for me, the cost was kind of becoming an issue. And I thought it was crazy that I could not quit. And then I did a Google search on that product and quitting or something. And I found, the community on Reddit. And I was like, oh my God. And just all the horror stories. And I was like, oh my God, this is awful. Uh-oh. What have I done? I'd be out at work and I'd feel like the sweats, you know what I mean? When I didn't take any. And I was like, this is weird, and for me, I started losing interest in intimacy with my wife. And I thought, uh-oh, that's a problem. And then the other thing I noticed was I had no desire to do my Bikram hot yoga. Like the thing I love to do, this is just terrible. And and towards the end, I was like, this stuff is sucking the life out of me. And it literally was. And it wasn't until I got honest with my therapist. So the first time I got sober 20 years ago, nobody told me I had a drinking problem. I knew deep down, like I didn't drink normally. And my kids were 4 and 6 at the time. And I could see myself hiding my alcohol consumption. And then I Googled sobriety. I found AA circuit speakers, and I would listen to those in my backyard and drinking, knowing like, wow, this thing is really an amazing program. And I'm definitely going to get sober. And so I finally got honest with my wife, and I told her because, I was just tired of feeling sick and tired back then. And so yeah, I made the decision to quit, and I finally did. And it's just so interesting how 20 years later that I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I went out after 4 years, and I've been in and out of the program. It seems like for the last like 15 years, and just trying to find that right sweet spot of being able to manage my drinking but it's just, it's based, I've come to the conclusion that my life is I'm powerless over substances and alcohol, and that my life is definitely unmanageable. And so for me, sobriety is like, I'm so glad I'm sober. So today I'm 28 days sober from the Kratom, kava, because that had to hold on me. Because I had quit alcohol a year ago in January. I had an upset with my wife and I was like, okay, she doesn't deserve this. I'm done. But I was still like taking the Kratom because I thought it was just an herbal supplement. And it wasn't until it was too late that I realized I'm addicted to this stuff. And so what happened for me at the end was I got honest with my therapist like about 4 to 5 weeks before I actually quit. And I had like all these false starts. And then it wasn't until I got honest with my children that, I just kind of told them like, I'm addicted to this stuff. I'm spending a lot of money and I'm committing to you that I'm quitting. And they were very supportive. And I picked a date and I just did it. A day or two before that, there was a podcast that came up on my YouTube feed, a guy named Jason Ellison, or two guys. It was two sober guys talking about their experience with the same product I was using. They could apparently afford, that was like one of my limits was the cost. Like they were way into it, but their description of how it affected them was so relatable. It was just nice to like hear a story that was very familiar. The one guy in that podcast turned me on to your podcast. And then I started listening to your podcast, and it's essentially like what got me through the hard times. Like I just kept listening over and over and over. And, luckily for me, the day that I quit, my family went out of town the next day. And it was just weird that going through those withdrawals, like I was a little nervous at first because the sleeplessness, like the sleep was terrible. Like the first several nights, I felt like I couldn't get comfortable and I didn't really have too many sweats. I was just lethargic, and it was just so awful. Like there's no way I'm going to do that again. Like relapse is not an option for me. Like that's not going to be part of my story. I hear people talk about it's tricky, but like I've relapsed so many times on alcohol and marijuana, and this was so bad because of how short the high is, that euphoria after consuming a bottle. It's so fleeting and it like goes away like so quickly. It's maddening to think of, just the use. It's just crazy. I'm just so grateful that I've got this time behind me and I get to share my story. And because, it's an insidious addiction, alcohol and this whole Kratom thing. I mean, it's an opiate. My therapist recommended, because once I got honest with him and I told him about it, he had consulted with a psychologist because I was worried. Like I thought I was going to have trouble. And so I did get support. It wasn't Suboxone. It was something lighter. It started with an S that he prescribed to me at my third day in. But by my third day, I was already over the hump and I didn't need anything. But I think it's there. And I think it's really great that these addiction specialists are out there and they can support us, when we're ready. And so that's comforting to know.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. Did you use any supportive supplements or anything? Because I know you were on the Reddit forum, so.
Yeah, no, I just hung out. I just rested, I mean, I've got a sauna and I've got a little redneck cold plunge in the backyard, and I hear that's like super helpful. And I did not take advantage of it. I mean, the first week, my energy started to pick up and I was back in the Bikram yoga room. And that's part of my recovery today, like just getting to the room and sweating. It's just like, I just love it so much. And it's so therapeutic just to be in that room for 90 minutes. And I'm definitely getting stronger. Yeah, no supplements or anything like that. Just a lot of lounging around and sleeping. I'm like just doing nothing. So, yeah, I'm just glad I had an empty house to just go through it. you know?
Absolutely. I know you mentioned your wife a few times through this, and I'm curious, what was her involvement? Was she watching you get these packages and asking questions, or did she know what was going on?
You know, it's crazy. She was traveling. When I was in Idaho, she was working in California. And so I was building that property. Again, like I'm a super high functioning alcoholic. She never saw the packages. I never had to really lie. Towards the end, deep down, I think intuitively, you could tell like something was off between our relationship. And because there was that disconnection towards the end. And that's what I was kind of worried about. Like, I've got to quit this before the shit really hits the fan. And it did, but only after I was 5 days sober, thank God. And I finally got honest with her because with my therapy, talking to my psychotherapist, he's just like, just focus on your recovery. All this stuff's going to come out. Like, you don't need to like throw a wrench into the spokes at this point. And so there's so much shame in that. It's like she's been with me for like the last 20 years and like she's seen me. And the beauty about my wife is like she's given me the freedom to like explore. Like if I go off the wagon, I'm like, oh, he's drinking wine today. It's not like she's judgy. Like she's always been very gracious as far as especially the alcohol use, because I don't think she's an alcoholic, you know, because it's a personal thing, you know, like only you can admit you're an alcoholic, and I'm definitely am. And somebody could look at my life and argue that I'm not, but I know I am, because eventually I'm going to overshoot the mark and then I'm going to feel like shit. And thank God I didn't kill anybody, because I've definitely been behind the wheel in a blackout, you know, more than once. And, you know, I think God has bigger plans for me in my life. I feel so blessed to be here today because of all of the trials and tribulations of life has gotten me to this point. But about a week ago, we went on a hike and I had the opportunity to share with her, because ever since I quit, I'm only getting like 6 hours of sleep. So I get up at like 4 a.m. I write my journal, and this is new. 4 a.m. Like, what's changed? And I'm like, I don't know, you know, so eventually I had an opportunity to get honest with her about the Kratom. And I just basically shared with her that I was using this product and it started innocently. And I was able to share with her about, you know, this podcast and how all of our stories are very similar as far as that initial exposure to Kratom, and then how it kind of works until it doesn't work anymore. And then it's too late. And then you're like addicted to this opiate. So that's something that she's got to process, another drug or thing that she's got to consider. And then, you know, I'm working the 12 steps. I'll spend the rest of my life making amends to her and my kids. You know, I just want to be a better human, a better father and a better husband, better son. So that's kind of where I'm at today. I'm just going to a lot of meetings, you know, like compared to rural Idaho where there's just one meeting a week. I'm in the greater Sacramento area and I've got access to so many meetings. And this sobriety community, I mean, we are so blessed because of all of the sober men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope that we have access to. You know, we just have to make the effort to take a chair and listen, you know. So I feel really blessed where I'm at today. Like, I don't know where my path is leading me, but I know that this is part of what I'm supposed to be doing, you know, as far as my experience. You know, I look forward to kind of digging into the sober community. And this is, you know, I know it's important for us to share our stories and our experience, strength, and hope. Yeah. So I really appreciate this format. I appreciate what you guys do. And yeah, it's really, really cool that what you guys are doing. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, I'm glad you came on. I'm feeling very honored to hear your story in this format. So I do have a few more questions for you.
Sure.
You've mentioned the program a few times, and it sounds like you were an active participant in a 12-step program prior to coming across Kratom, but I'm curious which program you're working with right now and what that looks like as an active part of your recovery currently.
Yeah. AA is what I initially found, because I was a weed guy for the longest time until I married her. And then she was like a snob to weed. And I remember like trying to be honest with her. And I was like, at least I can drink, you know? And so that's what happened. Like I crossed that invisible line of drinking too much. And so I'm definitely an alcoholic. So AA works for me. It's like, well, there's NA meetings, there's there's so many types of recovery meetings for whatever your addiction is. I think for me, like AA is the most popular, but I can go to any meeting and just kind of change what the addiction is to like what's going to suit me, because it's literally all the same. I mean, there's a lot of old timers in the rooms that kind of, if you bring up any other drug or, you're in the wrong meeting or whatever, it's just like, well, I don't need to share the exact, so when I go into the rooms, I'll just say this substance, it could be anything. And then I also announce myself as an addict and an alcoholic. And so that qualifies me to like be there and have a seat in the room. And, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking or using. So again, it's like, it's an open community. There are no rules or boundaries. And so I just love the beauty that brings with it, because, people just want to help other people. And this is how it works. And so again, it's like, it's such a beautiful, I mean, Bill W. and how this whole program came together, it was divinely inspired. You can't deny that. And so the fact that it's still thriving today and it's a program of attraction rather than promotion, I can walk through this world and just kind of carry my head high, and somebody offers me a drink or a drug, and I just, I'm proud to say I'm sober. Being sober is cool. I mean, I feel like I'm on a pink cloud, honestly, because I heard, maybe not you, but maybe one of the other interviewers, they were talking about music, and it's like, dude, I have just been getting into like all of the music that I grew up with. It's like creating emotion out of me. Like I'm crying like all the time. Like if I hear a song I haven't heard in a long time, it stirs up emotion in me. And I think there's a lot of trauma. Like it's good for us to release that. I feel like it's definitely healthy. It's just kind of weird. Like when it comes up, it's like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting that. It's like a heart opener. And the opposite is true. Like when I was on Kratom, it was sucking the life out of me. Like I was literally dying from within. And to stand back like a month away from it and just see the difference, it's so profound. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you shared that about AA and the program, because I have a soft place in my heart for it. And yeah, I think it does take that discernment almost, where you have to think to yourself, okay, I'm using the word alcohol, but it actually just means X, Y, Z. It's like whatever it is that I'm addicted to, it brings me to that room. Like I have a place here, it doesn't mean that I can't be here just because it's not alcohol. And I think that's a really powerful message, because there's magic in the program for sure.
So much. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you're looking forward to doing that you were being held back from, like this year, like any travel plans or anything like that?
Yeah. Right when I got on Kratom, like I started taking this stock trading course I spent a lot of money on, and I've gone through the whole program, but I'm looking forward to digging back in, because there's a part of the course where it's like you're looking over the guy's shoulder as he's doing his technical analysis on the day trading. And so I'm about ready to dig back into that with a clear head. And so I'm pretty excited about that, because that's always been one of my passions, was to figure out, how that works. But I'm not a gambler, so I'm going to take it slow and see if I can't get my mind around it.
Timing might be on your side with that one right now.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm excited about the future and my health, because it was going downhill. Like my blood pressure was increasing, and, I'm 57. And I want to be that guy that's, super fit, it's 80, and still out there getting after it.
How long did the whole thing take for you from the time that you were introduced to Kratom to the time that you were coming off of it?
Probably a little over a year.
Okay, so not terribly long.
Yeah, maybe 18 months max.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you said caps, you said tablets. Were they capsules with powder in them? They were okay.
Yeah,
they were okay. So were you taking 16 of those and one of the tonics?
Yeah. Yep. I was doing both. Maybe, but towards the end it was just the bottles. Yeah, 4 or 5 bottles a day. I would take 2 in the morning, and then every 2 hours I'd take another one until about 6, because if I took them too late, I didn't have a good night's sleep. I tried to manage that part of it.
Well, it's been really amazing. I'm wondering if there's anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to cover or anything else that we didn't go over.
One of the questions that you guys proposed was an epic show that you got to see back in the day.
Yeah.
So I just thought I would share. I got to see you two do their Joshua Tree album at the Oakland Coliseum, which was pretty awesome.
What year was that?
Oh, God. It was a little over 30 years ago because they came back around to do, their tribute tour. But the tickets are so expensive these days, for anything big. It's just like, it's crazy. Too crazy.
Yeah. What are your favorite bands?
I've got an eclectic mix. Yeah, like I'm just into music. It's all good. But Chris Isaac, Sade, U2, Coldplay, Feist, so much. Like Stick Figure, and my kids are like, they turn me on to new music, and there's so many new artists, like I can't keep up with them. But so I just listen to their playlists on Spotify and like songs and then replay them. So
cool.
Definitely an old guy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I feel very gifted by hearing your story. And I'm really grateful that you came on the podcast to tell it.
Thanks for the opportunity to share my story. I was looking forward to meeting you guys and being part of the community. So thank you very much as well.
I will pass that message along, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. Good to see you. Take care.